The story begins with something most people never see. Inside a silent factory somewhere in Southeast Asia, a thin sheet of silicon sits under a machine that costs more than a private jet. Blue lights blink. Robotic arms glide back and forth. A laser draws microscopic patterns, so small that thousands of them could fit on the tip of a pencil. That sheet of silicon will soon become the brain inside a phone, a car, maybe even a satellite floating above the Earth. But here is the strange part. The journey of that chip will quietly pass through a country most people never associate with the global chip race. Malaysia. Now pause for a second. When people talk about the semiconductor industry, they usually mention giants. Taiwan, South Korea, the United States, maybe even China. But Malaysia? That name rarely comes up. And yet, for more than 50 years, millions of the world's chips have quietly passed through this country. Factories, workers, testing labs, assembly lines running day and night. So, how did Malaysia become part of one of the most important industries on Earth? And why does it still feel like the country is stuck in the middle of the race instead of leading it? Before we go further, let me say something quickly. If you enjoy stories about hidden global power, technology battles, and the economic forces shaping the world, this channel was built exactly for you. And the strange thing is this. Most people who discover videos like this never subscribe, even though they come back to watch more later. So here's the deal. Subscribe right now, because every week we break down stories the world is quietly changing around you. The kind of stories that make you see the news differently the next day. All right, back to the mystery. To understand Malaysia's place in the chip world, we have to rewind more than 50 years, the early 1970s. At the time, Malaysia was not known for technology, not even close. The country's economy was still developing. Poverty rates were high, jobs were scarce, unemployment hovered around 8%, and the government was searching desperately for industries that could absorb thousands of workers. So Malaysian leaders made a bold decision. If the country could not invent the next big technology revolution, maybe it could invite it in. In the early 1970s, the government introduced a national economic strategy designed to transform the country's industrial base. Part of that strategy created special industrial areas called free trade zones. Inside these zones, foreign companies were given something extremely attractive: tax holidays that lasted up to 10 years, import tariff exemptions, minimal bureaucracy, and very light regulation. To a multinational company looking to reduce costs, it was almost irresistible. But incentives alone were not the only reason companies began paying attention to Malaysia. There was something else. Workers. Compared with many neighboring countries at the time, Malaysia's workforce had a reputation for discipline and English proficiency. For Western companies trying to run overseas factories, communication mattered more than people realized. So slowly, the calls began. Executives flew in, factories were planned. And then in 1972, a decision was made that would quietly change the country's economic future. A young American chip company decided to build its first overseas assembly facility. The company was called Intel. They chose a small island city in northern Malaysia, Penang. At the time, Penang was not known as a technology hub. It was a trading port with a long colonial history and a modest industrial base. But suddenly, something unusual started happening. One semiconductor company arrived, then another, and another. Soon companies like AMD, Hewlett-Packard, and Hitachi began setting up operations there too. Factories appeared almost overnight. Machines arrived in wooden crates. Thousands of workers were hired. But here is where the story gets interesting. The work being done in those early factories was not the glamorous part of the semiconductor industry. It was the part most people rarely talk about. To understand why, imagine a giant silicon wafer the size of a pizza. That wafer contains hundreds of tiny chips printed on its surface using extremely complex machines. Those machines, the ones that actually create the chips, are part of what the industry calls the front end of semiconductor manufacturing. That is where the most advanced technology lives. But once the wafer is finished, something else has to happen. The wafer must be sliced into individual chips. Each chip must be packaged so it can survive handling, and every single chip must be tested to make sure it works. Those steps are called assembly and testing, the back end of the industry. And historically, that back-end work required something very specific. Large numbers of workers with careful hands and sharp attention to detail. The work was repetitive, sometimes exhausting, but incredibly important. So many Western semiconductor companies decided to move that part of the process overseas. Malaysia became one of the biggest destinations. Inside those early Penang factories, workers handled delicate materials, operated packaging machines, and inspected chips under microscopes. Sometimes productivity moved slowly. Consulting firm McKinsey once estimated that workers spent as much as half their time simply waiting for machines to finish their cycles. But despite the slow pace, something remarkable was happening. Exports exploded. By the late 1970s, Malaysia was exporting hundreds of millions of dollars worth of semiconductors to the United States. At one point, the country's chip exports were roughly on par with South Korea and Singapore, and even larger than Taiwan's. Employment surged as well. Between the early 1970s and mid-1980s, semiconductor employment grew at astonishing rates. Unemployment dropped. Factories expanded. For a country searching for industrial growth, it looked like a huge success. But hidden beneath the surface were problems few people talked about. Working conditions inside some factories were tough. Workers, many of them young women, complained about long hours and strict supervisors. Some said the work strained their eyesight. Others spoke about exhausting shifts. Malaysia even modified labor rules to allow factories to run 24 hours a day in 3 rotating shifts. At the same time, wages were far lower than in richer countries. In the early 1970s, the hourly wage for similar work in the United States or Japan was nearly 10 times higher than in Malaysia. But perhaps the most important concern wasn't wages or working conditions. It was something much deeper: learning. The Malaysian government had hoped that inviting multinational semiconductor companies into the country would help local engineers and businesses learn advanced technologies. Technology transfer. But that didn't really happen. Inside many factories, workers performed extremely specialized tasks. One person might handle only one tiny step in the process. Another person another step. Few people saw the entire production chain. And without that full picture, gaining deeper technical knowledge became difficult. Malaysia had successfully attracted the semiconductor industry, but it wasn't yet clear whether the country could move up the value chain. For now, Malaysia had become one of the world's major back-end semiconductor hubs. But a question was quietly forming behind the scenes. If the most valuable part of chip making happens in the front end, the design and wafer fabrication, could Malaysia ever break into that world? Or would it remain stuck doing the final steps forever? And then, in the mid-1980s, something happened that forced the entire industry to confront that question. A crisis that shook semiconductor markets around the world. And unexpectedly, it would change Malaysia's trajectory once again. But how does a global chip crash create opportunity for a country still trying to find its place in the industry? The semiconductor industry has a strange habit. Every few years, it goes from explosive growth to painful collapse almost overnight. The mid-1980s was one of those moments. Chip companies around the world had produced far more semiconductors than the market could absorb. Prices fell, factories slowed, executives panicked. Suddenly, the industry was in a full-blown downer. In Malaysia's growing semiconductor hub of Penang, the impact was immediate. Employment numbers began to fall. Factories reduced shifts. Thousands of workers worried about losing their jobs. By the mid-1980s, semiconductor employment in Penang dropped dramatically. Workers protested layoffs. Crowds gathered outside factory gates. Police were called to maintain order. For a moment, it looked like Malaysia's semiconductor experiment might collapse. But industries often behave like forests after a wildfire. The destruction clears space, and sometimes stronger growth follows. As weaker companies disappeared, stronger ones survived. Some firms used the crisis to modernize operations. Automation increased, processes improved, and while this was happening, a completely separate global event subtly changed the economics of manufacturing across Asia. In 1985, several major world economies signed a historic currency agreement known as the Plaza Accord. The agreement caused the Japanese yen, the Taiwanese dollar, and the Singaporean dollar to rise significantly against the US dollar. That may sound like a boring financial detail, but for export-driven manufacturers, it was a big deal. Stronger currencies made exports from those countries more expensive. Suddenly, factories in Japan, Taiwan, and Singapore were not as competitive as before. So companies started looking for cheaper places to produce electronics. And once again, Malaysia appeared on their radar. The Malaysian government quickly reacted. Officials lowered the value of the Malaysian ringgit. They introduced new investment incentives. Tax credits expanded. The message to foreign investors was clear. If you want a stable place to manufacture electronics in Asia, come here. And many companies did. Japanese firms, Taiwanese companies, Singaporean manufacturers. Factories returned. Employment recovered. Exports climbed again. Malaysia had survived its first major semiconductor downturn. But the crisis created an unexpected side effect. During the recession, the Malaysian government had been forced to focus on stabilizing jobs and improving working conditions rather than pursuing a bigger goal, climbing higher in the semiconductor value chain. Countries like Taiwan and Singapore were beginning to move into more advanced areas of chip making. Malaysia, meanwhile, remained largely focused on assembly and testing, the back end, and policymakers knew that could become a problem in the long run. So in the 1990s, they decided to try something ambitious. Malaysia would attempt to build its own advanced semiconductor capability, a national effort. The government created a technology research institution designed to nurture a domestic semiconductor ecosystem. The organization was called the Malaysian Institute of Microelectronic Systems, or MIMOS. Its mission was simple to describe, but incredibly difficult to achieve. Develop the expertise needed to design and manufacture advanced chips inside Malaysia itself, not just assemble them. The plan eventually led to the creation of a new semiconductor company that would attempt something bold, building Malaysia's own wafer fabrication plant. The company would later be known as Sotera. In theory, this was Malaysia's chance to move into the front end of the semiconductor industry, the most valuable part. But building a semiconductor foundry is one of the hardest technological challenges any country can attempt. The machines cost billions. The expertise takes decades to build, and the competition is brutal. Other countries had already begun their race. Taiwan had companies like TSMC. South Korea had Samsung. China was starting to invest heavily as well. Malaysia was entering the race later than most, and without some of the advantages those other countries had. Still, the attempt itself showed something important. Malaysia did not want to remain stuck at the bottom of the semiconductor value chain forever. But ambition alone does not guarantee success. And over the following years, the struggle to compete in advanced chip manufacturing will reveal just how difficult this industry truly is. Because building a semiconductor ecosystem requires more than factories. It requires talent, leadership, research, and enormous financial patience. So the question slowly began to emerge again. Malaysia had successfully built one of the world's largest semiconductor assembly and testing industries. But could the country truly compete in the higher levels of the global chip race? Or would the industry always remain caught in the middle? And as the world enters a new era of semiconductor competition today, that question may be more important than ever